16th of October today, and it's very mild temperature at the moment. It's about 17 degrees centigrade, and I can see a moth around the light as I speak now. It looks just like a light brown apple moth, but it will be interesting to see if anything drops in given these mild conditions. There's a few quite nice migrants been caught of late in Nottinghamshire. That would be the real star of the show. Maybe a new species for the garden. But there's quite a bit of flower still here in this garden. Hopefully that might just attract something in as well. Fabulous conditions for moth trapping tonight, but unfortunately I'm trapping from the confines of home, and there's a good reason for that, and the reason for that is from up there. No, not some religious connotation, but some meteorological connotation, because rain is forecast, and heavy rain too. Little point in me travelling for half an hour or so to get to somewhere, getting set up in some prime Nottinghamshire woodland, only to find that within 5-10 minutes of switching on the light it starts to pour down with rain. And so I'm making the most of this little, or probably very brief, window of opportunity and dry weather to try and catch a few moths in the garden. Who knows? There's a light brown apple moth in, and I've seen Emelina monodactyla, so we've got 2 species already. But it'd be nice to get a few more species before the rain sets in. Well, just had this carpet come in quite surprisingly, and it's a red-green carpet. I remember catching the first red-green carpet I ever had here, and I was quite surprised because at the time in Nottinghamshire red-green carpet wasn't particularly common. But it's without a doubt increased over the last 10-20 years or so, than can be expected in pretty much any habitat. But a nice one to get for this evening. There's not going to be a big list of moths. This is October after all, and this is the time of year that we're getting to now where if you want to catch quite a lot of moths, you want to be in decent habitat, and woodland, deciduous woodland, is the best habitat that you can really visit at this time of year. But hopefully a few more moths like this will drop in. The last thing we want is for it to get particularly good or interesting and then the rain set in. But we've got 3 light brown apple moths knocking about the light now, and 2 Emelina monodactyla. It's just a fabulous name to conjure with and play around with, and has fond memories for me, Emelina monodactyla, because Dilys, when we first got together and we first started moth trapping, she never thought that she would be able to deal and even pronounce the scientific names of most species, but she did, and the very first moth that she learned was Emelina monodactyla. Always makes me smile, does Emelina. If you run a moth trap late in the year, you will invariably get numbers of these, and this of course is a green lacewing. There are only 2 species of green lacewing which overwinter here in the UK, and this one is still quite bright green. They do, as they get older in the latter months of the year, become an olive green and eventually quite a dull brown, and that's the colour which they'll overwinter in. The green, bright green coloration is attained once more in the spring. So several of these, in fact there's a nice brown one I've just noticed above this one, which I'll show you in a minute, but you'll get lots of these if you trap late in the year. They're looking for somewhere to pass the winter, but while doing so and being quite active flyers at night, they are strongly attracted to sources of light. This is the bright green form, and this is the dull brown form. There's not been so many lacewings. Well, I've not recorded so many lacewings at any of the places where I've trapped this year. So I'm wondering whether the numbers of lacewings are down too, as with most other insects. Quite beautiful things, not the easiest of insects to identify. A lot of the identification goes by the wing venation, so you do really need a specimen, or at least a very clear side-on photograph showing all the venation of the wings and at least above the top of the head. But I'm not saying that they can be successfully identified from photographs. Well, no sign of the rain yet, but not much in the way of moths either. But I have had a lesser yellow wonderwing. That's a species which has done really poorly for me this year. Admittedly, I don't leave the trap out all night, and that may be why a lot of people collect large numbers of the yellow wonderwings, but I've had very few this year, probably less than 10 individuals to be honest, and this is quite a late one. Something else that is late that has turned up is a queen ant. I'm presuming it's Lacewings niger. It's fully winged, but I have potted it up because October for nuptial flight of ants is highly unusual, and so there's always the chance that it could be something ridiculous. But we never know. With the way the weather is strange, say today has gone particularly humid and mild, quite good conditions actually for a nuptial flight, but I think this is just a one-off. I have had the odd queen ant turn up here before at light, and the several species of the red ants will frequently turn up on your sheet too. That's something interesting to check up on tomorrow, but I'm sure that it's just going to be a stray and probably lone queen Lacewings niger. So we await the next month. If I mention to many moth trappers the word or the name Eudonia or Scoparia, many people will turn straight off, but they are quite difficult to identify to species. Certainly visually they appear rather alike, but one species stands out probably head and shoulders as being very different and quite easy to identify from the others, and that's this one. This is Eudonia angustia. Difference is in the wing shape and resting posture. It is very narrow winged when viewed from above. It also flies at the time of year when no other Eudonia or Scoparia are flying, at least in Nottinghamshire that I'm aware of, and so you'll get this often very early in the year, but also late in the year, October and into November too. So that's a nice one to get on our slowly increasing species list. There's been quite a few redwing calls overhead while I've been out here. Not indicative of any large scale movement, more sort of birds locally that's in the area just moving through and moving on. There's certainly no persistent number of calls that you'd get from a strong nocturnal passage of redwings, but we're doing quite well on the moths front. I've not been able to film any because the ground is soaking wet anyway, because we did have a shower before I set the trap going. But we're now on to 12 species, and I'm quite surprised because we've stayed on about 6 species for ages. And of those that have come in, we have Lionesia clerkella, which is a tiny but very, very common leaf mining moth, which seems to have had an excellent year. Garden carpet, quite late now. Oak Nictuline is the top species so far, and I think that's only the second I've had here. I did think initially that it was a new species for the garden, but turns out that one has occurred here at some time in the past. Of the other moths, a lovely pyrid is Hypsipygia glossinalis, which is an absolute cracker, and that often occurs as a late partial second or second brood, so that's nice to have come in. On the migrant front, we have one migrant diamondback moth, Plutella xylostella, and quite a dark individual, but welcome nonetheless. And a black rustic, one of the less colourful moths of the autumn, but a fabulous black moth. And that's it of what's come in since the Eudonia angustia, which we had a look at earlier. So it's still rain free at the moment, so we'll continue and see whether anything else drops in. Well, no sooner had I switched the phone off from recording that last piece to camera, saying how good it had been and how surprising the number of moths and number of species was, when this happens. The joys of moth trapping in the UK. It always happens just when things are going well. The weather comes along to spoil it. Maybe I should think about having a canopy over this end of the house. That may be a possibility for next year.